So now we can turn to, after going through Afghanistan, what's happening in that region. We wanted to pick up where we left off with the most recent chart, because this is, I think, very important when we're looking at what is happening with yield, what is happening with food, and how does the water side, bake into this. And I did a most recent article on Iran looking at droughts and what's happening within the country, because when you look at the destabilization side, because the last time we were at these extremes was, and especially on food pricing, was the Arab Spring. And when you look at what kicked off the Arab Spring, is Afghanistan going to be that? Are we going to have something similar in the region where that's going to be the beginning of the next round of issues and pressures and problematic points? And that's what we don't know. And that's something that we're going to have to see and figure out over the coming few weeks to see what the next few, what that time is going to look like. But these are pressure points that have only gotten worse. As water scarcity continues, as we get these weather shifts where some extreme drought, some extreme weather events that are just leading to, obviously, flooding, you're getting this breakdown in terms of just where that capacity is, what is going to be that ability to feed your people, or you're going to be beholden to the international market. And a lot of these countries are facing a lot of inflation, a lot of fears, which again is going to increase that inflationary side. So just most recently, here was a flood in India that just shows what the expanse was when you're looking at flooding imagery, on how those floodplains were really taken out. And it just showing how there's so many extremes at this point when we're looking at what is happening in the market, what is happening with yield on crops. We need to keep and remain our ears to the grindstone and understanding what is happening, how is it happening, and how is that going to impact the flow of goods, because we continue to see an increase in exports from the U.S., other regions, due to these shortfalls. But something that I think is important is looking at corn yields in the U.S., because there's always been talk on technology and understanding, but there's natural limitations in the soil, and the soil can only be asked to do so much. We can try to do more with fertilizers, seed genetics, but what are we getting? We're getting some crop-resistant fungi. We're getting crop-resistant pests, things of that nature. So when we look at just the yield, corn yields in the U.S., you can see how we've flatlined from 2015, and we're just starting to get back up to it, but we're reaching that peak plateau, and I think that is something that needs to be appreciated, because the world population has only grown since 2015. It's not like they looked at this and said, "Oh, food's going to be tough, let's stop having babies." This is an underlying issue. So as we not only are seeing total yields come down, we're also seeing that happen in the U.S. We're seeing that happen in other places, which again is the demand continues to go up while supply comes under pressure. So then when we look at a change in global food prices, you can see just that general trend higher, and sugar continues to push higher. Cereals have flatlined a bit, some of these oils. And it's not that we have to see prices continue to surge higher. It's just there's no supply response or demand shifts, because guys have moved down or families have moved down that supply line as far as they can without starving to death, which again is leading to the side where you're getting this perpetual price increase, but you're not seeing, again, we're not expecting to see another surge higher. It's given we're coming into the harvest, so maybe we do, just given on how bad the harvest looks or how the harvest comes in the U.S., and in other parts of the world. But this is going to be something where, there's enough shift in the supply-demand function that we're going to see these prices remain in the system. So then when we look at U.S. corn utilization, and this comes to, even though yields have flatlined, more of it is being used as ethanol. So when we look at export feed and residual, so other food, seed, and industrial, so when we look at how it's being used, we're looking at 5 billion bushels or so are being consumed by the gas tank. So not only do we have an issue with the politics of it, and this is where some people will say there is no food shortage, it's all politics, which this chart could kind of say, maybe it is. Maybe if we took this ethanol side and turn that into either more friendly corn for consumption, beans, wheat, something that could be consumed, we wouldn't be in the same situation. But again, this is something to consider when we're looking at that ethanol backdrop, when we're looking at food, and how you have that pivot between what is actually politically charged and what is actually real in terms of these shortages. So then when we look at U.S. corn exports, you can see just what those corn exports look like and how they've only gone up. So 2020 was a record year, and we're already above 2020 in terms of trend, in terms of pace, in terms of everything. So we're going to have another record-setting year, and we're already seeing that in crop. So there's 20 to 21 crop and then 21 to 22 crop. So old crop versus new crop, and we're already selling out on the new side. So then when we look at the percentage of population suffering for food, we have to appreciate hunger and the driving force behind it. So then we look to Afghanistan, we looked at some of these regions, and let's look at food, let's look at scarcity, let's look at Afghanistan. So when you look at Afghanistan, the Taliban were able to move in. Did they promise food? Did they promise stability? You look at the rise of any communist regime. You look at the rise of Hitler in Germany. What did they? The rise to power was not on the killing of Jews or in terms of trying to bring about this collapse. It was stability. It was, you're not going to need a wagon of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. Now, that pivoted over time and a very short period of time as people need someone, a common enemy, and the common enemy became, look at the rest of Europe. That's why we're here. The Jewish population helped them do that. The gypsies are a cloud. So again, you can see how this can get moved out, but it all starts from hunger, from the basic necessities being, and then once you can capture someone mentally on, I'm going to provide you water and food, I'm going to provide you safety, it becomes much easier to move them down the route of radicalization. And that's why last week when we talked about ISIS and other types of Islamic movements in Africa, you see it increasing. Well, African hunger is up to 21%. That shouldn't surprise anyone. As hunger drives people to take action, because people will do anything it takes to feed their family. And that's why we have to look at the world, look at how things are shifting. And unfortunately, it's only getting worse. So then when we look at corn needs, so when you look at Brazil has imports have reached 21-year highs through July as domestic production suffers. Again, domestic production continues to come under pressure. We're not seeing the movements that we need to see. We continue to see this struggle point, which again is the bigger issue when we look at the underlying side of just where this absorption. So think about, and everything Brazil buys is taken off the market. So as Brazil can't grow their own, they supplement. And if they supplement more, that's going to take how much of that Argentinian corn was supposed to go to the Middle East, how much of that Paraguay corn that normally goes to other areas of Latin America need to go to Brazil. You see how it can compound on itself and create these shortages outside of just what is very much obviously front and center with the U.S. Backdrop. Percentage of population suffering food insecurity, again, has exploded. Africa is now at 59.6%. Latin America, Caribbean, 41%. The world in general, up to 30%. Again, when we talk about the end of COVID or the other side of COVID, the reason why we've talked so much about pressure, uprisings, politics, we talked about, I wrote the article about Lebanon and Sudan and Iran. You're going to see this anger continue to bubble up, and this is where food insecurity is going to be that driver. And the percent of population suffering severe and moderate food insecurity in Peru, 54.6%, South America, 39.2%, 30.4%. Again, you're seeing that drive higher. But when you look at the U.S., what is the U.S. bringing to this? And this is where we turn and we see the outlook for new crop in the U.S. carry out of 1.242 billion bushels is the smallest for this point in the cycle in 9 years. So again, missing on the corn side. Then you look at soybeans, still early, but new crop carryout for soybeans has been unchanged from 155 million bushels for 3 months now, but 160 million bushels on old crop is the heaviest estimate since December. But you're seeing just where we sit on 2021 versus 2022 and where we sit on 2021 and how that drops off and where we are in the cycle, again, leading to these shortages, leading to this struggle. And when we layer this over in Afghanistan, in Lebanon, in Iran, in other Middle Eastern countries, in other Southeast Asian countries that are struggling, this is where those uprisings come from. This is where, it provides the rallying cry to, because again, like you look at Iran, there's a lot of reasons to rally. There's a lot of reasons to be angry at the government. There's a lot of reasons to be angry, but this is the rallying cry. This is the one that brings people together under a common banner. And as you know, that's going to be something to watch as we progress and see how this plays out and where this goes from here, because there's a lot to be said. And now that we've covered more on food, we want to go deeper into U.S. economic data and where some of that slowdown has continued to creep up against that hard data that has been coming out over the last few weeks, and what does it mean going forward.